she was 11 years old. On a quiet Saturday evening in May 1996, Claudia Ruf left her home in Grevenbroich to walk a neighbor's dog. A few minutes later, the dog came back alone. Claudia didn't. What followed would become one of North Rhine-Westphalia's most haunting unsolved cases. Hemmerden is a small village in North Rhine-Westphalia. Quiet streets, familiar faces, the kind of place where children walk outside alone. On May 11th, 1996, around 6:15 p.m., Claudia Ruf stepped outside to walk a neighbor's dog. It was routine. She had done it before. Nothing about that evening seemed unusual until the dog returned without her. The disappearance. When Claudia did not come home, her family reacted immediately. This was not typical behavior. Within a short time, neighbors began searching. Police were notified. The response escalated quickly. More than 100 officers became involved. Helicopters searched from above. Tracking dogs combed through nearby fields and wooded areas. Roads were checked, but Claudia was gone. And with every passing hour, the urgency grew. A village under pressure. Hemmerden was not a large city. It was a place where neighbors knew each other. Children played outside. Doors were not always locked during the day. Claudia's disappearance shattered that sense of certainty. Parents began walking their children to school. Conversations shifted. Every unfamiliar car became suspicious. But what was perhaps more unsettling was this. If investigators believed the offender could be local, then the perpetrator might have attended community events, shopped in the same stores, driven the same roads. The crime did not just create fear, it created doubt, and doubt lingers much longer than headlines. The ransom demand. Shortly after her disappearance, the situation took another turn. A ransom demand was made. The family was contacted. 1 million Deutsche Mark was demanded for Claudia's release. Hope and fear collided. If there was a ransom, maybe she was still alive. Investigators had to move carefully. They needed to protect Claudia, but they also needed to identify whoever was behind the demand. The existence of the ransom complicated everything. Was the motive financial, or was the demand meant to mislead? The discovery. 2 days later, on May 13th, 1996, Claudia's body was found, not near her home, but approximately 70 kilometers away in Euskirchen Oberwichterich. She had been sexually assaulted. She had been murdered. Her body had been set on fire. The ransom demand now carried a different meaning. What had seemed like a possibility of survival was gone. The case shifted from a desperate rescue to a homicide investigation. The investigation. Police worked the case intensively. They examined known offenders. They questioned residents. They reviewed vehicles reported in the area. Investigators considered the possibility of a Nachtraumtat, a crime committed by someone with local knowledge. Claudia disappeared within a small radius of her home. That suggests familiarity, opportunity, planning. The distance to the body's location suggested access to transportation. Whoever committed this crime was mobile and confident enough to move across districts. Investigative challenges. Investigators were dealing with a narrow time window. Claudia disappeared within minutes. That suggested speed. It also suggested proximity. In small villages like Hemerdon, strangers are noticed quickly, which meant police had to consider a difficult possibility. The offender may have been someone who blended in, someone familiar, someone local. Investigators reconstructed Claudia's likely path that evening. They mapped distances. They analyzed how quickly a vehicle could leave the village without attracting attention. They checked traffic patterns between Grevenbroich and Euskirchen. The 70-kilometer distance mattered. It indicated planning. Fuel stops were analyzed. Witnesses were re-interviewed over the years. Even small inconsistencies were revisited. Cold case teams later re-examined the original files line by line. Because sometimes the answer isn't missing, it's overlooked. Despite these efforts, no physical trace led directly to a suspect. And without a clear match in DNA databases, the case remained stalled. Years without answers. Despite extensive efforts, no arrest was made. Biological evidence was collected. Over time, forensic methods improved. The case was revisited. In 2019, authorities conducted a large-scale, voluntary DNA screening. Approximately 2,000 men provided samples. No match. Years later, investigators reopened parts of the case again. In 2023, around 180 additional DNA samples were collected. Still no confirmed perpetrator. Nearly 3 decades later, the file remains open. The cold case reality. Claudia's disappearance changed her village forever. Parents became more cautious. Trust felt different. What had once seemed safe no longer felt certain. But for Claudia's family, the passage of time did not lessen the absence. Cold cases are often described as forgotten. This one was not forgotten. It was worked repeatedly, re-examined, reviewed, and still unresolved. Intensive closing. Claudia Ruf was 11 years old. On May 11, 1996, she stepped outside for a short walk in her own neighborhood. Within minutes, she vanished. Nearly 30 years have passed. Investigators have reopened the file again and again. DNA has been retested. Thousands of names have been checked. But the answer is still missing. Somewhere, there is a person who remembers that evening clearly, who remembers the streets, the timing, the decision, and for nearly 3 decades, that memory has remained silent. Claudia's case is still open, not because it was forgotten, but because it was never solved. And until it is, the question remains: who took her, and why? If you are interested in real criminal cases from North Rhine-Westphalia, both solved and unsolved, consider subscribing.